Hey everyone, welcome to the Gallimaufric Podcast. This is episode 3. So usually in anime, this is the episode that we show the big plot twists and get the hooks into the viewers. So hopefully that'll do the same for our podcast. So let us introduce ourselves. I'm Tommy Long. I'm one of the co-hosts of this particular podcast. I would ask the other co-hosts to introduce themselves in sequence.
My name is Scott, and I'm one of the co-hosts as well.
Hello, I am Raven, and I am the wife of Scott and also a co-host.
Oh, yes, I'm her husband. That should have been made clear earlier. Yes.
My name is Zachary Miller. I'm apparently a co-host on this podcast too. At least that's what these three people tell me. And I'm not related to anybody here.
As it turns out, none of us are related to one another at all.
Oh, true. Yeah, that's a good point.
It is just as well, like seeing how two of you are married. Like, this is not that kind of an anime.
Oh, no.
This is not the Deep South.
No, it's the northern version of the Deep South, Alaska. So,
So this is episode 3, and for this particular episode, we are going to be talking about a special book called Expedition by Wayne Barlow. But before we start that, let's just go around and talk about what everyone's been up to. So what's everyone been up to in between the time when we last recorded this particular podcast?
Basically, I haven't been up to much other than going over the Expedition book, and that's basically going to be my primary contribution this time.
Okay, I guess I'm up next. Scott and I did a few things this week. One thing that we did that we participate in every year is called Flood the Streets with Art. And this is the 8th year we've been doing this.
Yeah, I forgot about that.
And this is basically a thing where it's like an anti-Black Friday kind of counterculture thing where instead of people killing themselves literally to get the best deal on a television or microwave, artists like myself and Scott and people all over the world have been dropping art for free with little tags attached as kind of a gift from us artists to the rest of the world, and kind of a way to kind of counteract the whole spend a whole bunch of money and like be the best Christmas person, right? So, you don't have to spend a whole bunch of money. Sometimes all you have to do is slow down, look around, and take in what's around you. And it's kind of a way to get people to slow down during the holiday season and also remind them of what the season really should be about, which is being together and being with family and friends.
Free art.
Free art. So it's a way we give back to the community every year.
Yeah.
And we tend to drop in the same place every year just because we have a rapport built up with these folks now, and they kind of expect us to show up at this point. So we usually drop at Just Imagine Toys, and they had a socially distant Santa visit, so they put the art on display for Small Business Saturday. If any of you listeners are listening, just take a look around your hometown and see if any other artists have dropped art, because it's a thing that happens everywhere, even in places like Homer, Alaska, Anchorage. I've even seen some people in Devonshire and other places in the UK drop some art this year, so it was truly a worldwide event. The other exciting thing that happened, and I have not told anybody yet because it just got the email today, I was officially invited by Dr. Darren Naish to participate in this year's TetZooCon online, the TetZooMCon, as they're calling it.
Wow.
So I get...
Yeah.
I just got the email this morning, and I graciously and excitedly accepted. I will be heading up one of the paleo art discussions this year. So I'm excited about that and kind of looking forward to giving a talk. I'm not quite sure exactly what I'll be focusing on, probably something related to color, because I tend to like to talk about colors a lot when it comes to art.
A free opportunity to plug your stuff, so take it and go. Just show off all your art.
I will. I'd be showing off all my art and like all my friends' art if I can get away with it too. So it's exciting news on my end. And then the last thing I just want to quickly address here, if I can remember it. I think it had something to do with pins. Right? They aren't specifically science or paleo related. They're just some elephants painting a dripping rainbow with a paintbrush. And I'm very proud of them. They looked okay on a t-shirt, but they're selling a lot better as pins. That's for sure. Elephants Rainbow. You can look that up on Etsy. They're flying off the counter, flying out of the shelves, and in fact, out of my drawer. I also, just today, as I was going to get dinner, sold the very last 2 that I have of my Sailor Sue original design pins.
Oh, nice.
No more singles left. All I have left now is some that I have set aside because I'm going to be making whole sets of this, but I'm going to be calling the Sailor Sores. So if any of you don't get the joke, Sailor Sue came about during the redraw Sailor Moon meme that came about this summer. So I redrew Sailor Moon as Sue the T-Rex, basically, or Rexy, if you want to get Jurassic Park about it. And in fact, I kind of am getting Jurassic Park about it. So the whole rest of the series is going to be the rest of the Sailor Scouts as various Jurassic Park dinosaurs, or dinosaurs that appeared in Jurassic Park. I'm not going to be like going too close to the designs of Jurassic Park. I'm going to be making them a little bit more realistic, but couldn't quite say no to the classic roaring Tyrannosaurus Rex because I thought it was funny. And as it turns out, it's quite popular.
I can't wait to see your Chibi user Sailorsaurus redesign.
That one is going to be Dilophosaurus because of the hair.
That's right. Yeah, I remember I was talking about that like months ago. Pretty much as soon as you show me the Sailor Sue, the Sue the T-Rex Sailor Moon, I was like, we got to make a Chibi user.
Yes, and she is definitely going to be a Dilophosaurus. So that is basically all the news that's fit to talk about here on this podcast that I have. I'm very excited to see you all. Hopefully I'll get this podcast done and edited before December 12th when I have my talk with Tetsukon.
Oh, that's coming right up.
Yeah. Not a lot of time to prepare, but I think I got this.
Yeah, you got this. You could do this. No problem.
It's exciting, man. That's cool.
Thank
Cool.
you.
Yes.
So you've been up to anything, Zach?
Well, I've started thinking about January's PAX South. Last year, I went to PAX South and gave a talk for Nintendo World Report about it was a science lesson masquerading as a gaming talk, using first generation red and blue Pokemon to teach people how to do a very simple phylogeny.
Excellent.
It got a really good response. And in fact, I changed the talk a little bit and then presented it at the second Paleontological Virtual Congress. I gave the talk in PowerPoint form to a scientific community earlier this year, and people seemed to really like it. So I'm starting to think about upcoming PAX South, and I would like to improve the phylogeny and add more taxa. So I'll be doing that and probably dragging my friend Nick Gardner in to help me with it. He does the computer part.
Oh,
and
excellent.
I just write the characters and score the taxa. So I'm thinking about the PAX South talk and what that's going to be.
So explain to me a little bit about what this computer program entails that Nick Gardner does.
Yeah, so he builds. So I make a big Excel sheet. It's a phylogeny program like TNT or Mesquite. In fact, I think he might use both of them and then combine the results. But I don't know how to do it. I can barely operate a computer in the first place, but he really knows what he's doing, and he really helped me the first time. He really liked the idea. So I'm going to be doing that for more Pokemon.
You put in animals, and it spits out an evolutionary tree, basically.
Yes, correct. It does.
That's cool.
Yeah. It was a lot of fun, and people seem to like it. And people understood the concepts. I was impressed with how it's kind of intuitively makes sense that the more features two animals share, the closer related they are. But people are still married in high school and even undergrad to King's Play Chess on Fine Green Squares, Linnaean taxonomy that we've kind of moved beyond by now, but that's still what's being taught. So,
but like on a pragmatic level, having those phylogenetic rank when it comes to classification is still useful. I think you'll find that many professional working biologists out there still use those particular groups. Not necessarily because they're representative, but because they're useful. Like you don't just suddenly do away with all that and be left with nothing.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it was a good time, and I'm interested to see where it goes this year with all the tax I'm adding.
Awesome.
Excellent.
Well, I'll talk a little bit about what I've been up to in between now and the last podcast because I've been doing a lot. I wrote a new blog post over at the Parasite of the Day blog about a new paper that was published in Journal of Hymenopteron Research. It's a species description of a particular species of parasitic wasp from Sakai in the Osaka Prefecture in Japan called Microgaster Godzilla. If you're thinking the obvious, yes, it's named after Godzilla, but that's probably the least interesting aspect about this wasp because it actually goes after an aquatic caterpillar. And there are only 150 species of parasitic wasp that targets aquatic hosts. Now, in contrast, there are tens of thousands of species of parasitic wasp out there. It's been estimated that there are probably 2.5 to 3 times more wasp and hymenopterans out there than there are beetles. So that whole quote about God's inordinate fondness for beetles, no, it's actually for the hymenopterans, and for the vast majority of them, the most of the diversity within the hymenopterans are actually parasitic and parasitoid wasps. So now all of a sudden I have a great fondness for God, if that is indeed what God's favorite creatures are on Earth. So out of all those tens of thousands, only 150 species are known to target aquatic hosts. So that makes Microgodzilla very special, and it belongs to this exclusive club of parasitic wasp that targets specifically aquatic hosts. So if you want to find out more about that, you can head on over to the Parasite of the Day blog. I have a new post up there, and I'll put the link to the post in the show notes. In the meantime, I've also been, watching a whole bunch of seasonal anime. I'm keeping up with about 6 to 7 shows, which is unusually high. Usually I kind of, by this time of the season, I would have pared it down to like 3 or 4. But there's some intriguing shows this season. But one not simulcast show that I kind of revisited, or not so much revisited, catched up on, came out in 2018, and it was Legend of the Galactic Hero, the Noi Tessa, which was produced by Production IG and directed by Shunsuke Tada. This is an anime that was based on a science fiction novel series that was written by Yoshiki Tanaka that was published between 1982 and 1987. There are like 10 volumes in total. There was already an anime that was made by Kitty Films back in 1988 to 1997, and there are like 110 episodes of this. So initially, when I heard of this thing, it's like, oh, this sounds really intriguing, but like that episode count is extremely intimidating. But after watching this particular remake by Production IG, I can see myself watching like 110 episodes of this thing because this is really, really compelling. So the plot of Legend of the Galactic Hero is basically set in humanity's distant future. And it's about these two warring interstellar states. One of them is called the Galactic Empire, which is a monarchy, and the other one is called the Free Planet Alliance, which is a democracy. And it's kind of focused on kind of key characters and players within those two particular factions, but particularly on two characters, Reinhard von Musel and Yang Wenli, who are these brilliant tacticians and strategists. And it's about their rise to power and also how that intertwine with the fate of those two particular nations and the political intrigue behind that. I would highly recommend this for any fans of, say, the new Battlestar Galactica or Babylon 5 or even The Expanse. Basically, anyone who are into that particular category or the genre or subgenre of science fiction that I would call like space politics. I would actually say it's kind of reminiscent of the Romance of the Three Kingdoms as well, which was a 14th century Chinese historical novel series, because it's all about fate of nations and it's full of these vivid characters and how the actions and how they play into the fate of these political parties, as well as you got larger than life characters and stuff like that. So anyone who's into that, I would highly recommend go and check out Legends of the Galactic Hero. Apparently the original series was brought out as a box set, and that box set is, I think it's probably sold out by now, but it was like really expensive. It was like highly coveted item. So that's kind of what I've been up to between now and then. People who follow me on Twitter might have seen I have a massive haul of books that I'm going through at the moment. But aside from that, speaking of books, we are here to talk about Expedition, which was an art book by Wayne Barlowe that came out in 1990 and recently got a reprint thanks to Echo Point Books and Media. And it's the reprint that I managed to get my hands on. And everyone here know of and have a copy in some form or another of this particular book. And this is what we're going to be talking about this particular episode. So who wants to start off by talking about, I guess, their experience and impression of this particular piece of work?
I'd actually like to hear from Zach, if possible.
Oh, yeah. Go ahead, Zach.
I was made aware of Expedition by Scott years ago. I didn't know it existed until then, but he lent me his copy and I ate it up. It's a brilliant book, just beautiful illustrations and a really compelling narrative. But I've never been able to find my own copy. It's been out of print for, decades, and Tidal Wave never seems to have a copy. So I was pretty thrilled when Echo Point said they were reprinting it, and I grabbed a hardcover, and I've actually gone through it twice now since I got it. It's just such an imaginative book. It remains kind of my benchmark for alien life now in fiction. So pretty much everything you see in TV and movies is more or less a disappointment, I think, compared to this. But
yes.
And you'll probably often see me on Twitter when I'm talking about some sci-fi movie I saw saying, why can't they just do, expedition aliens or something? And people say, oh, there's budgets, or, oh, it's too alien, they need faces. No, they don't. They're aliens. But yeah, I love the book. I love the book.
Yeah, I got into the book basically in 1991 when I entered the college bookstore for my first year of college. And that was it for me. I mean, that's I still have the same original copy I picked up at that bookstore, the same one I lent to you at one point and brought back later. But it's just like, the book is fantastic. It's got a strong environmental message. It's loaded with all kinds of great art, a lot of which seems and feels inspired, honestly, by the kind of photography you would expect to see of animals on the Serengeti or something like that in National Geographic.
Yeah.
I mean, there's not much to dislike about this book at all. I mean, yes, at some level, you could say that these animals don't necessarily always make biological sense, but this book isn't about biology. It's a work of science fiction, first and foremost, and aliens besides. So the scope and scale of the work really does cover just about everything, from pole to pole to the mountains to the amoebic sea, which is a very strange alien portion of the book, which discusses the animals that live in and around and on top of the amoebic sea. And yeah, I don't know. This is just one of those books that sort of followed me throughout my travels from Fairbanks, Alaska, all the way down to Washington State, back up to Alaska. Everywhere I've lived, I have had this copy of Expedition with me.
Yeah, I'm kind of honestly a little surprised there's never been a sequel. Even in the book even says, the narrator says, I would love to go back and do drawings of the animals I wasn't able to do before.
Right. I assume that probably because of the great vast imaginary, of course, expense of sending an artist back to another planet. But yeah.
Yeah. Could also be that he was just done, I totally get that.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Done.
That wish on the part of the quote author, unquote, is part of the science fiction aspect. I mean,
true.
An artist that had been sent to another planet would love to go back to that other planet and continue sketching and drawing animals. Raven, do you want to take a stab at Expedition?
I do, actually. So I have more of a long-term relationship, to me anyway, because 1991, when this book came out, I was in, I believe, middle school. And I believe I actually got a hold of a copy at the middle school library. And they also had a copy at the high school library, too, later on. So this is definitely, Expedition is part of my formative artist years. Expedition and his other book, the Guide to Extraterrestrials.
Barlow's Guide to Extraterrestrials, which I have a copy of. Yep, right here.
As do I.
Actually had, like, for the black hole that the Matanuska Susitna Valley can be, the librarians that we had at Colony Middle and Colony High schools were top-notch. And really did not care about, opinions of the people that were going to school there or of the parents. So they stocked some very comprehensive and very interesting things, including most of Wayne Douglas Barlow's work. Of course, because it is very Christian, they, of course, didn't have the demon book, but that's okay.
I've never seen that on a shelf ever. I've always wanted it.
Nor have I. Oh, you are lucky.
I didn't
But,
get it though. Couldn't afford it.
I think we were
back-
both at Tidal Wave at the same time.
Right.
Did you see it at Tidal
Yeah.
Wave? That's where I saw
Oh
it.
my god. No way. I must have missed that.
I think they wanted $30 for it, and we were both like, well, we don't have that on us now. We'll come back.
You're
Yeah.
right.
And it was gone.
And it was gone.
What a pity.
I know.
So yeah, Expedition has been a part of my life since I was a preteen, pretty much. I wouldn't say Barlow had a huge influence on my art, but he was really pretty to look at and always very inspiring. Even if his style didn't rub off on me, he's got more of a realistic style. He didn't rub off on me artistically, but he definitely rubbed off on me imaginatively, if you can catch my drift.
Oh yeah.
So I was more apt to kind of play around with aliens and like making my own creatures and stuff. And that's kind of where my own speculative evolution race, the Grendali, kind of blossomed from originally. It didn't really have a purpose behind it or even a story of evolution or where it came from. It was just an alien that, was like a dog dragon. And then it became, then I kind of just morphed it into something like a Therapsid descendant, basically, mainly because of Wayne Douglas Barlow's book. And to be honest, reading into it, and
there are definitely a lot of attributes on all of these animals that show common descent as well.
yeah,
Yes.
Even if a lot of
one
that
of the brilliant
stuff
things
doesn't
about
always
it.
seem like that.
yeah. So
Yeah.
as a kid, hungry for science, of course, this is a great way to be introduced to the concept of evolution without getting drowned in a bunch of science stuff that you may not totally understand. And what you don't understand, you fear. That's how it is in a rural community anyway. It's supposed to be.
Yeah.
So it's a great book, really. It's
Oh, yeah.
fantastic. I really cut my teeth on pushing myself a little bit more artistically and more trying to understand how evolution works, how traits are passed on, and how you can see similarities between seemingly disparate groups that are actually related to each other. And like, but an example that I've been liking to use lately is my newfound knowledge that parrots and falcons are more closely related to each other than falcons are to any of the other birds of prey. And I found that kind
Really?
of, yeah, they're part of the same, they're not part of psittaciforms, but they're like a sister group to them. Like they came from the same ancestor. So
Weird, man.
right. So next time you look at a falcon, you can see it as a murder parrot.
Yeah. What's your favorite animal or creature from this book?
Oh, Lord. I have an answer. I just have to find its name. You go first if you have an answer already.
I have an answer. It is the Groveback for myself. Yeah.
Oh, geez. I think it is for me, too. Is it? No, wait. No. It's the Rayback. I like the Rayback.
Oh, the Rayback's good. Yeah.
So I have to throw in my lot behind the Groveback as well. Either that or the Emperor's Sea Strider, just because it's so cool. And
Oh,
big.
yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's
Oh,
got
yeah.
mouths on the bottom of its feet, which I think was an interesting adaptation there for eating that amoebic sea.
The amoebic sea, which is some sort of stand-in for algae, as I gathered it, because it has so much biomass on the planet. Because the actual map in the very beginning of the book has Mare Amoebicus, and it's just ginormous. I mean, it's the largest single organism on the entire planet.
Takes up 5% of the planet's surface area.
And on a planet that doesn't have any major bodies of water, that's kind of amazing, apart from the glaciers.
Right.
Borealis and Australis. But if I had a secondary, the Rugos floater is also which is on the cover of my edition of Expedition, is my
Okay.
second favorite. Oh yeah, the floaters and flyers also always fascinated me.
Oh, yes, the moon-shaped thing. Yeah, that is a cool bugger.
I do, of course, the dagger wrist is cool. The dagger wrist is pretty cool, but
Oh, yeah.
everybody loves the dagger wrist. It's like the T-Rex of Expedition. Apart from what was that other one? The arrow tongue.
The
Yeah.
arrow
I
tongue,
guess,
yeah.
yes, I guess he described as being T-Rex sized. Yeah, I kind of liked that just because it's, you know, big and lizardy and dragony, and I'm a fan of all of the above. So
Of course, the butcher tree is also kind of weird. It's very sessile.
Yeah.
yes, the butcher tree is interesting.
Man, I don't know. There's just, can you pick just one? And then I can't. Not really.
No.
I keep
Everything's
going
just
through
so
it and
well thought out, and I think
Oh, yeah.
it's brilliant that nothing exists that has vision. It's all based on echolocation.
For the most part, yeah. And
Yeah.
that's one of the key things tying all these critters together is their echolocation.
So, Tommy, how did you get into expedition?
In terms of like how I came across this, like I've come across Wayne Barlow's art before, and I find it particularly intriguing in various different capacities. And it wasn't until probably around about, I would say mid 2000, that I realized that a lot of these art that I've been admiring had come from one particular person. And I think that's round about when I found his personal website with all his art, and I was like, oh,
Mm.
this is amazing. The first bit of art that I came across of Wayne Barlow's were probably the ones from his Hell series, the Barlow's Infernal series. And then I
Yeah.
found out about Expedition. And then I found out subsequently that Expedition had been made into a TV show by the Discovery Channel. So I kind of came across the book first, but very soon I came across like Alien Planet, which was the show that they made about it. And for a while, much like many of other Barlow's book, this was like a very coveted piece of work because it was so out of print. I remember there was a like art collection that came out, like a art book collection of various Barlow's work that came out probably a few years ago, and I remember wanting to get that, and it was sold out very very quickly. So the fact that Echo Point Books and Media made a reprint of it, I was like extremely grateful, and I'm hoping that this book would do really really well, so that they would do a reprint of Barlow's Inferno, because that's probably even
Yes.
higher on my Barlow to get list than this book.
Oh, he posts a lot of his Inferno illustrations on Instagram, and I'm always just taken with them. And I really do hope there is a reprint, because I would love to see them in large format. Really
Oh yeah,
take them in.
yeah. For anyone who have come across like my older artwork from like over 10 years ago, my Eschaton of the Beastry series, those were heavily influenced by Barlow's. Like the
Nice.
whole aesthetic, like the whole weird aesthetic that carries out through all of Barlow's work, this very otherworldly kind of aesthetic. I was heavily influenced by that during that period. I was gonna say that it would be like the historical context for, I guess you could call it historical context for Alien Planet is extremely interesting in itself, because it came out like in 2005, and it was around about a period when there was a lot of these shows coming onto various networks, which were these what I call, I guess, evolution fan fiction type shows.
Yeah.
There were like fake speculative evolution show. You had like Future is Wild, and that was followed by National Geographic having the Extraterrestrial show, which I think actually have far more basis in science than what Alien Planets try to pretend to be.
Yeah.
And I'm guessing that Discovery Channel, like my head canon, so to speak, of what happened was that the Discovery Channel found out that National Geographic had the show, and they're like, oh, we need like one of those. We need our own like made up alien, extraterrestrial aliens series, and we'll dress it up as a documentary to try to get more people in, people who would normally be into science fiction stuff. But if we call it documentary and we get a bunch of talking heads to give it some kind of like credence, then people will be drawn in. Because to be honest, Alien Planet as a documentary was like extremely dodgy. But I would have rather have seen Expedition as just an all-out science fiction mini-series rather than trying to pretend to be something that it isn't.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be an ideal. Oh, absolutely. Because there was a lot. I think I saw that briefly at one point, but I can't remember what, and I don't remember all the details very well. But it was like the environmental message of Expedition was gone. There was like an emphasis on, well, all of these animals look really unlikely, but actually they could actually have existed. That sort of breathless take on it.
Yeah, and there weren't people in cones floating around viewing these things. They were like little robots that were taking video of everything. And if I recall, I've made this complaint on this show before, but the computer animated animals look extremely dodgy themselves.
Yeah, not ideal. A miniseries would have been a much better treatment of the material. Give them actual time to imagine and develop these creatures.
Yeah, I guess Barlow never really set out to make a biologically plausible series of aliens. He you look at his website and he described the process of like coming up with creatures for expedition. And it was basically he had a vision, which is of something like wildlife photography. But what if the wildlife were like really weird and strange and otherworldly? And he went out of his way to give them features that are otherworldly. And one of them is the fact that all of them are blind, which is a thing that is probably one of the biggest indication that it is not scientifically valid, because when you look across just living things on Earth, the evolution of like sight is one of those such basic level thing to evolve. It's so easy to evolve sight as opposed to the complex echolocation that these expedition, like the creatures on Darwin 4s have. It would be like for them to not have evolved sight, it will be the equivalent of someone who does woodworking and doesn't know how to make a chopping board. However, they can make a full-size water wheel that powers like a grain mill or something like that. It just doesn't really make sense.
Yeah, it's like the building blocks aren't really there for echolocation as easy as they are for sight.
And it's been estimated that like sight, like eyes, have actually, or things that resemble some kind of a very basic rudimentary eyes, have evolved something like between 40 to 65 times within the animals themselves, like independently. That's why you have so many different types of eyes. So evolving eyes really, really basic, as opposed to like complex echolocation on the level of the expedition creatures. There's only two orders of mammals that have that, which are the Chiropterans, the bats, and the cetaceans, the whales and dolphins. And they have evolved echolocation under some rather specific ecological circumstance. And out of those, the only one that is closest to the Barlow creatures, which is like blind but use echolocation, is the Ganges river dolphin, which lives in really, really murky water. So that's the only known thing where you can have like echolocation and blind, because guess what? Being able to see is really, really good. Especially considering the other thing about the expedition creatures, which were they have these biolights, like all these creatures that have these biolights, which makes them look really, really cool, which is the aim of this book. However, when you consider that they're blind, it seems a bit strange. Like who or what are there to actually see the biolights? Like what's their in-universe reason for existence if everything on this planet can't see?
I think somewhere in the book, somewhere it says that they have thermal sensors like a rattlesnake and that they can sense the biolights. But you're right that you wouldn't need a complex pattern of biolights if they can't see.
Yeah. And I guess the other thing too is that like thermals, that's like infrared radiation. So that's on the electromagnetic spectrum. And guess what? The visible light is also on just another type of electromagnetic radiation as well. So if they have evolved ways of sensing heat like infrared radiation, why not be able to sense visible wavelengths as well?
Yeah, that's a pretty good point.
So I don't want the listeners to think that I'm like being a hater, because I actually absolutely love and adore this book. It's a beautiful collection of artwork. It's just that in terms of its science, it's kind of on shaky ground. But I didn't read Expeditional Science. I read it to look at these cool stuff, and it's just that Discovery Channel for some reason decided to make it a documentary, and I'm guessing probably because they needed something to compete with like National Geographic that had the Extraterrestrial series. So they're like,
Yeah.
oh crap, where are we gonna get some cool aliens? Hey boss, we found this cool book. Okay, call this guy up. We'll offer him like however much he wants. And I hope Barlow made that from these guys trying to cash in on the whole alien planet documentary trend that was going at that time.
Since we're on the subject of expedition, I just wanted to mention that in the book, which I just pulled off my shelf, The Alien Life of Wayne Barlow, which was published back in '95, he had another project, Balon 3, where he was going to have an expedition style thing. And the stamp for it actually reads G.S. Hara, Barlow, and Tippett. And that's about all that there is for this. There's a couple of graphs about kind of a fictional take on it and a couple of color sketches in painting. But that's all that I've seen of this. So if anybody out there knows some more about this, I'd love to hear from them.
Jeez, me too.
If you go to Barlow's website and click on the, he has like his separate, on his, I guess, portfolio, he has all these different works like Barlow's Inferno and Expedition. If you click on the Expedition one and scroll down to the bottom, you'll find 2 paintings that were not included in Expedition, but like tantalizingly, captioned with Expedition 2? ? So that, I don't know if that's related to this Tippett project.
That would be amazing.
Yeah, that
to
would be.
have a Tippett and Barlow co-production. I would really pay good money for that.
Yeah.
Come on, guys, hop to
Yeah.
in your infinite time, right?
I was going to add to that real quick. I've been surprised to learn ever since reading Expedition of just how many film productions Wayne Barlow is a part of. Like a ton of them.
Oh yeah.
There's
Yeah.
tons.
If you go to his website, you found that he's done like concept artwork for, obviously one of his most well-known role was probably with Pacific Rim with Knifehead. But he also did a few of the other kaiju from that film as well, or at least the concept art of. He also did some concept art stuff for Harry Potter, one of the Harry Potter films, and also
The third one, I think.
for
Yeah.
Avatar. James Cameron's Avatar.
Really?
Yeah.
His the
Oh, yeah.
creatures were based, I guess. Barlow's original designs are always a bit more gnarly and out there, and they kind of toned it down for the mainstream moviegoers. Because I mean, we all know about Barlow's stuff. They're all really, really wacky and.
Yeah, totally. When you look at the that 6-legged horse again,
Oh yeah.
forget what it's called, but the horse in Avatar, take another look at it, and it's like, oh, that's totally Barlow.
Interesting.
Yeah. Like I said, they've toned it down to like, okay, this is really cool, but a bit too out there. We're gonna tone it down a little bit here.
Huh. Yeah, it's funny you say that because the horse is like my least favorite character in that whole movie. Because it's so non-alien. It's just a horse with 2 extra legs.
I'm actually trying to think of like what in Avatar is like, I guess, truly alien. You got that big rat monster that just looked like a big rat. That big predator that looks like a big rat, and I don't remember too much from Avatar.
Those dragon things were cool, but not super alien.
Oh yeah, the thing that they rode on with their head tentacle USB connection.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
The fan lizards, the little spinner guys that would take off with the glowing fan, that's totally a Barlow thing.
Yeah, that sounds like a Barlow thing, yeah.
Yeah.
I can't remember much else from Avatar. The main thing is the whole like connect to the forest internet via the head tentacles, which I guess that is one of the things in there that have like as whacked out as it seemed. There's actually some biological basis because trees have symbiotic mycorrhizal fungi, and the mycorrhizal fungi can stretch out over an extremely large area and actually connect many of the trees together, and they can send, I guess, chemical messages and communicate with each other via this network of fungi. So these fungi are like service providers in more ways than one for the trees.
Huh. It's kind of cool.
Yeah, that's kind of what I remember about Avatar. But yeah, Barlow's footprints are like all over many movies that have like creature designs.
Yeah,
Huh.
he does a lot of conceptual art. So
I don't mean to harp on Avatar, but I always think that it's funny for the big splash that movie made in theaters when it first came out. Everyone talked about it and how it was new technology and 3D, and nobody talks about it anymore. But you still talk about Jurassic Park like it came out yesterday and is still amazing, and it is.
yeah,
But it's weird that Avatar is never a part of that conversation.
yeah. Avatar is it built a lot on existing technology. There wasn't really a whole lot, at least as far as I could tell, especially new per se.
Mm.
I think people talk more about The Matrix and other big science fiction films instead.
Because it get
Yeah.
Jurassic Park left an impression too. Because as I recently talked about in a recent talk that I gave at a science in a club thing, this was Jurassic Park when it came out was the first time that dinosaurs were depicted the way that they were in Jurassic Park. Like we kind of take it for
True.
granted now with the Jurassic franchise,
Yeah.
but prior to that, the way that Velociraptor and Tyrannosaurus behave and looked in Jurassic Park, that was so different to how dinosaurs were in like the older films. This was like the whole post-dinosaur renaissance back looking dinosaurs, not
Yeah.
the big old dumb lumbering lizards the way that they were. So that's why that really left an impression on people. And that's kind of the case for a lot of these films. It's not even really so much about whether there's a particular technological breakthrough that enabled it, but like whether it presented as something in a really compelling way. Like for example, Terminator 2 is much fondly
Oh, yeah.
than Terminator. So
Interesting how some things get embedded in the cultural consciousness, and some things just kind of, even though they're amazing in their own right, they just don't make the same impact.
Well, I think Jurassic Park also had a better story than Avatar did.
Well,
To
Avatar
be
was-
fair,
of
yes.
course.
Yeah, Avatar really was retreading familiar ground. Let me just say. I mean, it had its own little quirks and innovations, but yeah, we've seen that story before many times. When Jurassic Park first came out, I mean, I had no idea you could get dinosaur DNA from amber and all that sort of stuff, and you probably can't. But it is interesting to speculate that you could get an animal's DNA from a critter being trapped in amber for millions of years and then bring that animal back.
Right.
yeah, I really feel that Jurassic Park was at the peak of the whole, like in its kind of film historical context, was the peak of when Michael Crichton was like hot property in Hollywood.
yeah.
Oh yeah.
Like all his novels, and then afterward it just all went downhill. You got Congo, you got
Oh, yeah.
Sphere.
Congo.
Like Congo is great to watch, but like as a entertaining band movie. Sphere is just fucking boring. Like that's terrible. I read both the book and like watched the film.
You know what's weird though? I really like Sphere. I don't know why.
I just I read the novel, and like at the time I was a teenager, so I was like, oh yeah, that's pretty cool. But I watched the film and it was really, even back then I was like, ugh.
Oh yeah. No, I'm not going to tell you it's a good movie. I just don't know why I like it at all. It is very boring.
Hey, I like a lot of trash as well, so I can understand. But then afterwards, it's all went down, and there was a while when, because I read a bunch of Crichton novels like Congo and Sphere, my dad got it in his head that I like Michael Crichton novels as opposed to I like science fiction novels. So he bought me this other Michael Crichton novel for my birthday, and it was called Airframe. And I don't think there was even a movie that was made about this. It was like about air crash investigation. And it was totally like, oh, this is so Crichton. This is so really technical. And also like have this weird Orientalist kind of a approach to like Asian people as well.
Oh, great.
Which is very evident in The Rising Sun. So yeah, this is like, well, after I read Airframe, I was like, I'm never reading another fucking Crichton novel ever again.
Probably a good decision.
Yeah, probably. I keep seeing his book, and yeah.
Every
like,
time we go on a vacation, I bring a new Crichton novel along, and man, they're trash. That's a trash.
Why do you torture yourself like that, Zach?
Well, because it's kind of like watching a bad movie, but you're reading a bad book, and you know it's terrible, but
Yeah.
it's like so earnestly terrible.
I guess
Like-
I can understand like
It's like,
earnest
how many-
terribleness. Yeah.
How many sciencey words can I throw in here to maybe make it sound like it's semi-plausible?
Yeah, I guess I can understand the earnest terribleness as opposed to like this really cynical terribleness that right now I'm thinking of Ready Player One and Ready Player Two, which
Jesus.
are practically
Oh,
identical
geez,
books
yeah.
in that they were, you go to TV tropes and just like pick out random things and read them.
Oh, yeah.
You might as well have a better time than reading that book. But like, yeah, I can understand the campy, earnest, like I'm doing great work when it actually is not. There are other science fiction novels that I have read which give me a similar kind of a feeling. I'm thinking actually of this other science fiction novelist, Neil Asher, where after a while I realized that he kept writing the same book. It just happened to have like elements in it that I find that appeals to like kind of my lizard brain. It's full of like zap zap sci-fi guns and crazy monsters and like spaceship and pew pew and all that kind of shit. But there's a degree of earnestness that I feel like as if the author thinks that he's like writing great literary work, whereas I'm just kind of consuming them as like, yeah, this is like a
Right.
Michael Bay film of books. Yeah.
Yeah.
To be fair, I did the same thing with Dean Koontz for a while. So, but I not related at all because he's more fiction and less science fiction.
We all like our junk food. So,
I suppose.
Exactly.
as long as you keep it regular and read some like get some good stuff, good healthy stuff in there every now and then, you can let yourself go and read some junk.
Now, I will say there's one Michael Crichton book that I've read that I do wish they'd make into a movie because I would just be interested to see how they do it. It's called Prey, about swarms of
the
nanomachines.
right?
Yes. I just like to see how they portray that. The book is terrible.
Are they gonna make a movie of it?
I think it's
I
been
don't know.
optioned.
I feel like Crichton's like limelight, like the time has fallen on Crichton. I don't
Okay.
think that he's
Yeah,
such
oh
hot
yeah, it
hope
has. Yeah.
at the moment, unless you're really desperate. Yeah, this particular podcast had gone from us start talking about an expedition, and it turns into like a big Michael Crichton roasting
Right.
fest, which is fantastic, by the way.
Ultimately, we're just happy Michael Crichton had nothing to do with Expedition.
Well,
Oh,
yes.
God.
Yes, that's
Yes.
true. Pretty much it. I mean, I've gone over everything I can think of about Expedition, except for the remarks I made on my blog at one point. I'll have a link to that in the show notes.
Yes, Expedition's cool,
Expedition Darwin Fall.
but also not 100% scientifically plausible because in the end, like Tommy said, it is just an art project.
And it's science
Yeah.
fiction too. I mean, the text basically supports that completely.
True.
Yeah.
I think in one of our previous discussion, I kind of talked about how many of these like expedition creatures, many of these Darwin 4 creatures are basically just reskinned animal. Like if you get player characters on like NPCs in the video games and you replace how they look like, but they still behave in the same way. Like
Yeah.
when they have that Skyrim
Oh, yeah.
mod where they remod the dragon so it looks like the Thomas the Tank Engine. It still acts and behaves like the dragon from Skyrim. It just looks like Thomas the Tank Engine and make tank engine noise. And I would say this is kind of the case with like many of these expedition creatures. It's like Barlow was like, okay, take a mountain goat, but weird. And then you get the springworm, which is like a Barlow-wise mountain goat.
But then you
Yeah.
do have the truly weird and alien creatures like
Oh,
that
yeah.
tundra crawler.
And that's usually the ones that like doesn't make any sense. like the groove back or the mummy head, and many of these things are like really weird and really Barlow, and they make no biological sense, but they're cool because they're
Yeah.
cool Barlow weird creatures, and that's what we take them for. We don't try to pretend that they're scientifically valid or biologically plausible, unlike Discovery Channel. But then Discovery Channel is infamous for all kinds of bullshit.
Right. I do want to mention one thing, throw this in, because I did have a big nitpick about this. The new version of the book, and I understand why they had to do this, is printed on a way different paper stock and has a different printing process. And that means that instead of a great, awesome metallic copper ink, we have this kind of weird orangey brown color that permeates throughout the layout of the book. And
Oh, you're
you know,
right.
I just think maybe it should, if that was the case, maybe if they were going to be doing some layout changes anyway, because they basically had to float a different size page layout into the size book that they were printing here, and I think that was a cost saving measure as well.
Yeah.
Because books like this are notoriously expensive to print out. So the paper stock, I complain about just because I'm used to that nice slick paper. But then again,
From my copy, yes.
yeah, so the original copy has
Yeah.
a nice slick feel to it with that spot to ink.
I do want to point out that with the exception of the acknowledgments, there is functionally no difference between my copy and everyone else's copy.
That is
From
one thing that is
Yeah.
really great
So
about
and
this.
everything is there.
Everything
So-
is there. It's 100% faithful to the original. I just nitpick about the color choice because just something about that metallic ink was just really nice, but it did have that tendency to transfer from one page to another. It was hard for that paper to hold that kind of ink.
Yeah.
And so you had a lot of transfer, especially if you carried the book around a lot.
Which I did, yeah.
And I would too, because I would check it out from my school library a lot. I never actually owned a copy of my own. I didn't even know of a place that would carry this book in Wasilla, let alone anywhere else except for
Yeah.
the library. So when Scott had a copy on his shelf when I first met him and started dating him, it was like, oh, I think I found the one. I judged you by your book collection, hun.
That's
Well,
awesome.
I mean,
That's awesome.
there was that meme that went around on Twitter. It was like red flags on a man's bookshelf. It was something like, ladies, if you go into his house and you see a bookshelf that looks like that, that's a red flag, or something like that to the extent. And this is kind of like the opposite of that.
Yeah. It's a green flag. It means go.
Yeah.
Go for it.
And as it turns out, it was a checkered flag, as in I didn't have to go date anymore, which was really good. So,
Okay.
Win-win.
Okay, so you hear that, listeners? Anyone out on the dating scene at the moment, make sure you get a copy of Wayne Barlow's Expedition if you want
There
to
you go.
impress your
You won't regret it for any reason whatsoever. Yeah.
yeah, for sure.
Yeah. No matter who your preferences are, they will be impressed with Barlow's Expedition on your shelf, because that shows you are a person of culture.
Yes, you are definitely a person of culture if you have that on your shelf. Either edition, highly recommend you go out and get it, especially if you're into what's called speculative evolution. We've talked about that before, and actually,
Well,
a lot
again.
of us, three of us at least, I don't know if Zach has, but I think we've all worked on our own speculative evolution. Actually, you did, Zach. You did work on a speculative evolution project with us.
All four of us, yeah.
Oh,
All four of us. So definitely a good idea if you are into that kind of thing where you're creating your own animals or doing creature design and in general. Just kind of check this book out.
oh yeah.
Just for the fact that this is the one of the most. I think he's one of the busiest artists next to David Krentz in film today. Still, even after a long and storied career, I think he's still going strong too.
Oh, yeah.
All right. Thank you very much for listening, and that'll be all. Signing off.
Catch you in the next episode.